All right, so we have Unit 7. We talk about 5 different presidents and the politics or expansion or time of war, depending on the president. This is quite a large, different unit, but we should be able to make it through a lot in not a huge amount of time. First of all, talking about President Jefferson. His first election was in 1800. Against him was a Federalist named John Adams, and the Republicans supported Thomas Jefferson as well as his vice president candidate Aaron Burr. During this time, the Electoral College could actually vote separately for those two different people, the president and vice president. So what could happen is that one person of one political party could be president while the other one could be vice president, and cause a lot of issues. But whoever won the majority of those two separate positions would have office. When this happens, we can see that nobody really had majority for either side in this case, so they had to look to the House of Representatives to decide who was going to be president and vice president. Jefferson ends up winning based upon 73 votes. To make sure that this won't happen again, Congress passed the 12th Amendment, which means that electors can only cast one vote for president and one for vice president. The Judiciary Act of 1801 comes from different cases that happened with the Supreme Court, as well as actions from John Adams before Jefferson came into office. Before Adams left office as president, he made sure to have a whole bunch of appointments and decisions that would guarantee Federalist control, or what he thought would be Federalist control, after Jefferson was inaugurated. All of these really sneaky moves are called midnight judges. When we have one of the cases come up with the Supreme Court, his name is William Marbury, and he asked the Supreme Court to force his commission that was written by Adams. This creates that famous case of Marbury versus Madison. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, his name is John Marshall, came up with 3 principles of judicial review when it comes to cases like this. Number 1, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Number 2, the Constitution must be followed when there is conflict with another law. And 3, the judicial branch can declare laws unconstitutional. One of the most famous things that Jefferson does while he is in office is the Louisiana Purchase. During the time of the war between France and Britain, there is a lot of things going on where both countries need a lot of money. But Spain secretly transfers the area of what later becomes the Louisiana Purchase to France to help them get more land and more supplies. But to avoid this invasion that Jefferson thought was going to happen, he sent Robert Livingston over to France and tried to buy New Orleans and western areas of Florida for around $2 million. Napoleon, the leader of France, was actually very desperate for money at this point because of the battles that they were having with the British. So he offered all of the land that was part of the Louisiana Purchase for just $15 million. This was everything to the west of the Mississippi River down to like an area of Texas. We decided to make this purchase on October of 1803, and it actually basically doubles the size of the United States at the time. Regardless, even though we got this land, they didn't really know anything about it. They didn't know if there were mountains or lakes. They didn't know the animals. They didn't know the plants. So when you look at this map, you can see why they wouldn't know anything. It's a large amount to the side, and at the time, before the American Revolution, the Americans weren't allowed to go past the Appalachian Mountains according to British law. And if they got caught going past, they would get in trouble and maybe even sent to prison. So after the Louisiana Purchase is made, Jefferson sends Lewis and Clark on an expedition to be able to find out all of that information that they want to know, that they're curious about. He has Congress sponsor that expedition and give them all the resources and money that they need to be able to get their supplies. And when they go on to that exploration, which is called the Corps of Discovery, the territory's people, plants, land, and future fort areas, as well as animals, is documented. The main goal that they had was to find out information and create a passage or way of travel for future Americans, especially using water routes or any sort of water travel down the large rivers that could be possible. The 2 main guys, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, also had a third person who was in charge. It is Clark's actual slave. Although these people don't really look at York as more of a southern slave, he's actually someone who's kind of on the same level with the other 2. They are good and informative scientists and businessmen who can work with the Native Americans, and that's a big part of why York was there. Not only did we have these three people going, but they also had an entire crew of different people. They had different sailors for the water, gunsmiths to help with any sort of metal, carpenters, scouts, a cook, and 2 men of Native American or French heritage to be able to have any sort of interpretation or communication between those people. They take off for the Louisiana Purchase exploration on May 5th of 1805, and it lasts for around 18 months, which is around 4,000 miles to the Pacific, and they come back September of 1806. We know that Sacagawea is one of the girls that end up helping them navigate this entire area. She has experience in this, and she knows information about the area that they travel. And she's actually responsible for actually saving some of the materials that get lost in the water, especially the diary of Lewis and Clark and all of their information that they try to document. Now, while they are out exploring, there is some issues happening over on the East Coast, especially for those who are in charge of the government. After rumors of state secession from the Union start to happen, which is the beginning pieces of the Civil War that later comes, Alexander Hamilton thinks that Aaron Burr, who was the vice president at the time, is working to secretly take New York out of the Union. When Hamilton accuses him of this, we can see that it actually hurts Burr's political career as the vice president and makes a lot of issues. When this happens, of course, back in the day, they wanted to settle it with the guns, and so Hamilton is challenged to a duel, a shoot-off, with Burr. They meet in Weehawken, New Jersey in July of 1804, and Hamilton decides, I'm not going to shoot, I'm going to tell you that this is something that we can solve, but Aaron Burr decided not to do that. He actually shoots Hamilton, making him the winner, but causing Hamilton to die the next day. Jefferson's actions with this, not only during the Louisiana Purchase, but all of the other political actions he has, makes him have issues with his second presidential run in 1804. At the same time of the presidency in the United States, Britain and France, as we said, were fighting to have different issues, and especially when America was trading between the two countries. The British-American trade happens even though that war between Britain and France is going on. So in 1803, while both countries were at war, the U.S. traded with both of them at the same time. By 1805, Britain and France were trying to block the other from trading, so the U.S. market decreased in prosperity. Essentially, we would try to trade with Britain, and France would stop us in the water from doing so, and the other way around. When the nation was asked if they were going to get involved in either side of the fight, we have claimed neutral rights in this case, saying that, we just want to trade, we don't want to fight, we don't want to be part of this issue between the two countries. To try and make it even better, Jefferson and Congress passed what's called the Embargo Act, and it prohibits any sort of trade with foreign countries, making the United States have to supply everything to themselves and trade between different states and areas. When this happens, it really hurts our economy, it really hurts the supplies that we have, and so this act is repealed because it hurts the trade and profit of wheat, tobacco, and cotton prices. In 1809, they repealed the Embargo Act. The election of 1808, which could have been a third term for Jefferson, is run between Jefferson, James Madison, and Charles Pinckney. Jefferson later refuses to have his third term in office because of all the political agenda that has happened throughout his 2 other terms. And in the end, James Madison wins across Charles Pinckney from a vote of 122 to 47. During his presidency, the nation passed another trade act, and the restrictions that are prevented any sort of Britain trade or France trade. Britain didn't negatively respond to this, but France did, and any time that they found any sort of American vessel full of trade for Britain, Napoleon decided to seize or sell the ships so he could make profit during the time of fighting. Madison, during his presidency, thought that there was going to be a war on the U.S. territory, especially out west when there are Native Americans fighting against colonists who are expanding in their territory. With this going on to happen, we can see that yes, the Native Americans do indeed kind of try to fight against the westward expansion of the United States, especially people who come out on trails or anything like that. When they travel onto those native grounds, they begin to see Native Americans connecting with the British for any sort of resources during a fight. The most powerful Shawnee chief, Tecumseh, and his brother tried to halt the movement using British resources that were up in Canada and bringing them down south to the U.S. territory. When Tecumseh met with the governor of the Indiana Territory, whose name is William Henry Harrison, he was warned of the power of the United States. Tecumseh responded by saying that even with the treaty between the two, the U.S. has continued to force the natives from their territory, saying that they're not actually, residing by their type of the contract. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. In the Battle of Tippecanoe, this is happening after the conversation with Harrison and Tecumseh, but in this battle, Tecumseh is not there. The main issue here at the battle is that they're attacking a town called Prophetstown, and this is an area of major native population. When this is destroyed, we can see that Tecumseh does come in as a way to help them and says that they need to get more guns and ammo from the British people for fighting. After all of this fighting happens, there is another battle in the War of 1812 coming up, where William Hull is ending it by surrendering to the War Hawk Battle. A War Hawk Battle is something that's encouraged by members of Congress to be able to figure out and push for another war. In the War of 1812, we can see that in July of 1812, Americans, British, and Native Americans fought throughout the northern part of the Ohio Territory. The U.S. Navy had some of the fastest frigates or warships for battle, so they sent people to Lake Erie to try and destroy British forces. Before the Battle of Thames, and that is how you pronounce that, is not Thames, it is Thames River, Tecumseh encouraged the natives to form a confederation with the United States. This causes the British to be able to fight in both the U.S. and France and strain their forces and materials because it's two places that are far apart. Britain tried to attack D.C. and actually succeeded in taking control of the capital, burning down most of the city and even parts of the White House. The famous Star-Spangled Banner that we have now is written by Francis Scott Key while he is watching this attack from the British, especially in areas like Fort McHenry, which was burned down September 13th of 1814. Extending the War of 1812, we can see that the British actually attacked a lot more key eastern coast cities, including Baltimore and New York, but their main goal was to get to capturing the town of Plattsburgh, which has a key control area for the Lake Champlain part, leading into Great Lakes and other areas of the northeastern area of colonies. In December of 1814, we actually met up with the British in Belgium over in Europe to sign a peace treaty to end this war. But because communication wasn't nearly as good as we have today, with cell phones, no fast train travel, no airplanes, we actually kept fighting for a whole other year. And in New Orleans, the British troops tried to take over the area, but were defeated by Andrew Jackson and his troops. At the end of the presidency leading to the Industrial Revolution, we can see that it actually goes back to two other presidents and actually starts in the very beginning with Jefferson and then thriving in the Monroe presidency. So it goes through three leaders and ends with Monroe, where he really starts to see an improvement in the industry. It also began in England before reaching the United States. We take this idea and this action from England and move it over to the U.S. to make more new inventions, as well as larger factories and mills for hiring workers and higher profits and wages. In the Industrial Revolution, we can see that the factories and inventions